Ladies and gentlemen, today I have the pleasure to welcome Mr. Vasu Bandhu and Mr. Johnny Martin. They are husband and husband. And our conversation will lead us to talk about faith, interfaith, and marriage. Mr. Vasu, Mr. Martin, thank you very much for joining me under the Human Rights Tree.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
So basically, we're going to start with the first topic, faith. Would you mind share with me your faith background? And I'm going to start with Mr. Vasu.
I practice in Buddhism. I'm a Buddhist monk.
Okay. What about Mr. Martin?
So I was raised in a evangelical Christian household, and all four of my grandparents were Catholic. I myself am Muslim, so I revert to the religion of Islam, and I'm the only person in my family who is a practicing Muslim.
I see. There is a historian that said, if the Almoravid were able to conquer Spain, Mexico will be a Muslim country today. Of course, it was not the case. So Mexico is a Catholic country in its majority. Based on your origin, you are from Mexico. How do you end up being a Buddhist in the majority country that is Catholic?
When I was 18, I met the Interfaith movement in El Salvador, Central America. And in the Interfaith movement is where I met all diverse religions, including Buddhism. So with the time, I take the decision to practice my religious freedom and to become part of the Buddhist community, to serve as a Buddhist monk. But that was because Interfaith helped me to learning about the diverse religions.
So before being a Buddhist, were you a Catholic?
Yes, because my parents, I was baptized in the Catholic Church, and because my mother, I was also part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church.
So where are you from, especially in Mexico, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, my community is called Tlaxcala. It's very close to Mexico City.
So you grow up in Tlaxcala in the Catholic family?
That's right.
Growing up as a Catholic, what were the fundamental they taught you, your parents, and being church, what they taught you about the Catholic religion?
My family is very dedicated to the Catholic faith, to go to church, to do the celebrations and the holidays, to observe. And I was always very deeply connected with faith, and for me has been very important, faith. And when I became Buddhist, I always feel the respect and I always embrace my history with the Catholic Church and with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So did you recall the moment where you said, I have to move on with Buddhism or with another faith? Or it did take you time to reflect and think about it before choosing, adopting another faith? How was your experience from being a Catholic to ending up being a Buddhist?
Practicing the religious freedom by to learning the diverse religions and to also discover myself, to find myself in my own practice was a very deeply experience. and also takes some time. So that took me some time to learning about myself, to find myself, and to take the decision to become Buddhist. And after that, take the decision to become a Buddhist monk.
I believe it requires a lot of courage to be able to take your own decisions despite society, the society around you. So I will go ask the similar question to Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the United States, originally from the Chicagoland area in Illinois.
Oh,
And
really?
then, yes, and then when I was 13 years old, my family moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay.
And that's where I've spent most of my life. I do consider Arizona to be home.
Did you grow up in a very religious family?
Oh, yes. Yeah, my family was very devout, would self-identify as not religious because the nature of the evangelical Christianity that my father practices is sort of sees itself as not being a religion so much as it's a relationship with the figure of Jesus Christ. And so, that I was forced to go to church against my will, more or less, from the time that I was born until I was 18 years old, when my father told me that from then it would be up to me if I wanted to attend church services or not. But I had already started my own path by that point to kind of develop my own spirituality and define my own religion.
I see. So when did you take the choose? At which age did you decided to become a Muslim?
Well, technically, I was 21 years old when I took the Shahada in front of the community and officially became a Muslim. But I had sort of been on the path, moving closer and closer toward Islam for some time prior to that. I guess I can summarize as a short story. When I was a teenager, I stopped identifying with Christianity and with my father's churches. But I sort of threw the spiritual baby out with the religious bathwater, so to speak. And instead of looking for a different path, at that time I became sort of anti-religious. And it wasn't until I was a student at the university, actually, I took a class my first year on religions of the world. And I enrolled in that class because I thought it would make me a better atheist. I actually wanted to learn about all of the different religions so that I could try to argue with people about why their religion was incorrect. But the experience I had in that class was really, really groundbreaking for me, in the sense that I started to feel that I could identify with these different ancient spiritual traditions if I could only understand them better. And so I really enjoyed learning about all different kind of religions, but I was moving closer to Islam all the time. And when I finally had friends who were Muslim who knew that I wanted to learn more, specifically one friend, Mohammed from Saudi Arabia, he invited me to the mosque. And that's when I learned how to pray. And I decided the very next day to take my Shahada. And that was October 4th, 2014.
I see. Often people decide basically to join another faith because they were quite disappointed about their own faith. Is it your case? Or you decided just, I feel much comfortable with my new path, so I'm choosing that path. Which one was it?
Yeah, I can answer that first, and then maybe Vasu might have a different experience and a different answer. For me, my own father actually has asked me this similar question before, especially because obviously I'm gay. I'm married to someone of the same sex. And so my father had thought that the reason I rejected Christianity was because I'm gay. And so he became concerned and asked, if you were so upset with the church for persecuting you, why would you join another religion that is even worse towards the LGBTQ community in his perception? But I explained to him it has nothing to do with that. I didn't leave the church because I'm gay, and I didn't become a Muslim because I'm gay. Being gay is just a background part of my identity. And so it's not a choice. It's just part of who I am. It's something I accept about myself, and I accept that it's part of the way God made me. But so really what led me to Islam was not a rejection of anything about Christianity so much as it was embracing a community that I felt was true and just. And I always tell people, I find beauty in a lot of different religions. I think a lot of them speak to the heart. Islam was the only religion I found that spoke to my heart and my head at the same time. So it's a religion that's beautiful, that makes me want to be a better person, but it also seems factually true to me based on the claims it makes about the nature of life and the cosmos. So I'm a Muslim because I believe it's true.
What about you, Mr. Vasu?
For me, I always embrace my background and my history with the Catholic Church and the LDS Church, and it's very important part of my life. I feel that this is why who I am, because my background with the Catholic Church and the LDS Church. And also I find in Buddhism my path, and I find peace and harmony and mindfulness, which help me in my daily life. So this is why I became Buddhist, but always with the deeper appreciation and intention to live in harmony with my background with the Catholic Church and the LDS Church.
So you basically found the ways to incorporate your traditions and your newfound faith. What I learned in life that any decision we take may, we may face challenges because we decided we will move on far from what the society expects from us and choose our well-being and do the things we think is right for us. What were the challenges you faced by deciding to choose your own path, by choosing your new faith? Can you share few, experiences or one specific experience that constitute a challenge that you feel comfortable sharing?
Thank you. I feel that sometimes misunderstanding from the religious institutions about the religious freedom that each individual have to choose to change the religion even. So I think sometimes the institutions don't understand that we as individuals, we have the freedom to change our religion. And I think that was a challenge for me, but also with family and society. Sometimes society and family don't understand that we are free to be ourselves and to find ourselves. So that's for me.
What about you, Mr. Martin?
No, it's interesting because I think you can kind of tell that my husband and I have different approaches, almost opposite approaches to our respective religion. Whereas, he has become a Buddhist, and not just any Buddhist, he has become a practicing monk and a leader ordained in his tradition. Whereas in my community, I would not go so far as to say that I'm an outcast or anything by any means. In fact, I've never had an unkind or uncharitable word spoken to me by another Muslim, even with them knowing that I'm gay and married to another man. So I think that speaks to I'm actually, not mistreated within my community in any way. But it's recognized that I sort of exist on the margins of that community. There are a few white American Muslims to begin with, and then a lot of the others who are white American Muslims probably are not also in the LGBTQ community. So it's a unique intersection that I inhabit there. But the challenges that I faced have not been what you might expect. See, the thing is, I do have a degree. My bachelor's is in religious studies and religion, public life, and conflict. So sometimes when another Muslim, finds out that I have this identity, they will make assumptions about what I do or don't know. And I think it's always dangerous for any of us to make assumptions. I'll have people who think that I have a certain sect or a certain type of interpretation of the Quran, for example, and they find out it's different. So, yeah, I think the challenge for me is more often than not just, living my truth and what I understand about my religion. And I'm never shy to share about it. I don't hesitate to tell people what I believe and how I practice, but it's not always well received. We live in a country here in the United States that's full of prejudice and full of, ignorance, and a lot of times fear and hate. So I don't always experience that because I inhabit a lot of privilege as well. But when I do experience it, it's oftentimes focused on my religion or my sexual orientation.
Despite, like you mentioned, prejudices or assumptions, we can say that you did have the courage to live on to your belief, and it's not many people who have that guts, basically, to choose the path they want to choose in their life. And we should salute your choices and respect them. Today, both of you are Buddhist and you are a Muslim. Often religions are viewed through movies or through the news. And I don't want to go into reflecting those prejudices or assumptions. Just why I would like to ask you, can you tell me what are the pillars of your religion? Mr. Martin, what are the pillars of Islam?
Thank you. So there are 5 pillars of Islam. The first and most important is the Shahada, which is the statement of faith. It's a belief, really, but it's also a verbal declaration that one makes, especially if you're reverting from a different path to the religion of Islam. You say, I believe there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is his prophet and messenger, in your native tongue as well as in Arabic. So that's procedurally how one becomes a Muslim, and it's the first pillar of faith. The second pillar would be, actually, the next 3 can sort of come in any order, but you have daily prayers. It's very important for a Muslim to pray 5 times a day. It's difficult, and it's something that not every Muslim does as regularly and devoutly as we should. But we pray at specific times, and it's based on the position of the sun in the sky. And next, you also have zakat, which is giving money to charity. It's a percentage of one's total wealth, not dissimilar from the Christian concept of tithing. It's just calculated a little bit differently and can be paid directly to those in need. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid to the mosque, although some people do it that way. You have Psalm, which is the practice of fasting on the 9th month of the lunar calendar every year. It's called Ramadan. Many people are familiar with this as a month-long Islamic festival. And the last pillar of faith is the Hajj, which is a pilgrimage that all Muslims are encouraged to take. Actually, we are required to take this pilgrimage at least once in our life, as long as we are physically and financially able to do so. Take a pilgrimage to Mecca in what is modern day the country of Saudi Arabia. And there's more rituals involved with that, but these are the 5 pillars that unify all Muslims. To me, they're exceptionally important because there are many other things that people would say, oh, this is an Islamic practice or belief, or this is something you do as Muslims. And many times it doesn't apply to me. So, I say really looking at these 5 pillars is the way to understand who we are as Muslims and what Islam is at its core.
Thank you for sharing. Mr. Vasu, we know that there are diverse forms of Buddhism. Would you mind just be more specific on the kind of Buddhism you follow and what are the pillars of that path?
Thank you. Something that we have in common, all diverse schools and expressions of Buddhism, is the Four Noble Truths. For example, and the Four Noble Truth is about the truth of suffering, the truth of cause of the suffering, and the truth of the end of suffering. And finally, the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. So the Four Noble Truths is something that we have in common in all diverse expressions of Buddhism. In my personal practice, I'm part of the Zen school. So Zen also focus on meditation, sitting meditation, what we say and call Zazen. And Zazen, it literally is sitting meditation, which focus on emptiness and develop mindfulness, compassion, and understanding.
So the Zen, the kind of Buddhism you follow, took its origin where? We know how Islam is in Saudi Arabia, if I'm not mistaken. But for the Zen, is it in China or in India? Where that kind of Buddhism took its roots?
Buddhism traveled from north of India to China, became Chan, and then traveled to Japan and became Zen, and is where Zen became the school in Japan.
I see. To Mr. Martin, often when somebody say they are Muslim, Muslim come reflect a certain culture and sometimes name. Were you once challenged about the name you carry and the religion you choose?
Well, interestingly, many may not know this, but John is not only a Christian name, it is also an Islamic name, but the Arabic form would be Yahya. So I don't intend to change my name, and I'm really glad you asked about that distinction between religion and culture, because I encounter this all the time. Most of what people think about when they think of Islam is colored by the cultural context that they are, that they're seeing it in. So, for a very long time, I used to wear an Islamic skull cap that looked not different from this one, but it had, sort of Islamic sayings and imagery on it. But it looked like a baseball cap. And when people would say, I've never seen an Islamic skull cap that looks like that, I said, well, you probably haven't seen a lot of American Muslims, and what the style of dress looks like is usually defined more by the country than it is by the religious practice. And so, I don't intend to change my name. Another thing that's kind of funny, though, that has happened is I've been at the mosque before, removing my shoes with others from the community right there in the entrance to the prayer space. And somebody next to me saw my hand as I was removing my shoes and saw that I have a mark on my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Oh, wow, that's very interesting. You have a tattoo on your hand of a cross." And I said, "Yes, it's interesting because it's a symbol of my, my former beliefs, and my family's tradition." And he said, "Oh, well, are you going to get it removed?" And I was sort of taken back by the question, because I have no intention to remove this either. Even if I don't, I maybe don't believe the theological claim necessarily that Christians think about when they see this symbol. I understand what it means to a Christian, and it's a symbol of the ultimate love, the ultimate sacrifice. And I can draw inspiration from that too, even if I don't directly believe the actual claim. And it also, to me, is a symbol of my family and my heritage. So in some ways, it's part of my culture to be, somebody who came from a Christian family.
To support your argument as well, in Islam, there is a recognition of Jesus Christ. There are written about him, accepting him as somebody who was sent by God, and somebody we need to follow. in your journey, has I already told you that when we met, it's quite a fascinating journey. You decided to choose another path, but you didn't basically just choose another path and be content with your path. You engaged to another journey, which is the journey of interfaith. When did you decide to basically to work on seeking other religions and trying to associate yourself in with other religion as an interfaith activist and movement?
Well, in my case, I began when I was at the university setting. After I took that course in religions of the world, I knew that I wasn't an atheist anymore after that, but I didn't know what my religion was. So I spent some time.
So you often mention the university. What is the university name?
Oh yes, Arizona State University,
Oh,
ASU.
okay.
That's where I did my undergrad. I'm actually in a different university now. I'm at the University of San Diego studying law.
Okay.
But when I studied religions, it was at ASU, and you know, I found that that